I'm here today with Michael Klonsky, an old friend. He's an educator. He's an activist. He's been running the Small Schools Workshop. He's about to take on a new role as a professor in political science at DePaul University. Mike, let's talk about No Child Left Behind. Tell us what that is, how it came to be under the Bush administration, what it actually did, and what changes we might hope to see in the time to come.
Well, No Child Left Behind is the K-12 Education Act that was really not just Bush's creation. It was really a bipartisan screw-up. I mean, the Democrats... Screw-up, yeah, that's what I call it. It's in name. Actually, it took the name. No Child Left Behind from Marian Wright Edelman's group. It kind of co-opted that, which is an interesting...
Who is Marian Wright Edelman?
Marian Wright Edelman is the head of the Children's Defense Fund, which has been out in the forefront of civil rights and fighting for the things that poor kids need. And so the act took on the name No Child Left Behind from them. Shows how our language can be easily co-opted. And what they did...
yeah, we shall overcome.
Yeah, they put in place a very punitive system that punishes schools basically for having poor kids in them, because if schools don't test well, I mean, it actually mandated that by the year 2014 all kids would be testing above grade level, which is a ridiculous concept in the first place. But No Child Left Behind is now so discredited that no politician, neither Obama or McCain, would even run in support of it, neither party. So now what they've done is, in the reauthorization, Arne Duncan says they're going to get rid of the name No Child Left Behind because it's so discredited. Now we're waiting to see what's going to replace it. So we're pushing for much less emphasis on standardized testing and much more support and resources going to the neediest schools.
Let's touch on Arne Duncan a little bit. You and I, both being members of Athletes United for Peace, we like that he's a basketball player. You were telling me a little bit earlier that he was the captain of the Harvard basketball team. What do you think is his legacy here in Chicago, and do you expect any improvements or differences in his role as the chief educator in the United States?
Well, one thing we hated that he did in Chicago was initiate a policy called Renaissance 2010, which we had high hopes for at the beginning, just like No Child Left Behind, but it's what it's turned into. Instead of a program to create new schools, it's really become a school closing initiative. And dozens and dozens of schools are being closed, especially in the African American community here in Chicago, robbing those neediest communities of valuable resources. And now it seems like under Duncan's replacement, Ron Huberman, the school closing policy is continuing, and schools are being closed arbitrarily.
Why? Why are they being closed?
Well, I think it has much more to do with the way Mayor Daley sees neighborhood development and real estate going than it does, and also about the lack of resources, the lack of money for education. But they're pitching it under as if it were a school reform initiative, and that's what I hate. I mean, it's one thing to say we can't afford to keep schools open anymore. It's another thing to say this is school reform in action, and which is what Renaissance 2010 pitches it as. They've claimed that there's been a miracle in Chicago schools in the last 10 years or 15 years under mayoral control, and it's really been that miracle that pushed Arne Duncan into the Secretary of Education job. But when you look at the hard realities of schools, or if you walk into a school on the west side of Chicago or a high school over on the south side, I see basically the same conditions as I saw 20 years ago.
You and I, as progressives, we always kind of had a rap that would say, we need to take less money, take money away from military and put more money into education.
Absolutely.
And I've often said that if we really were going to change this country, we would have to take, massive amounts of money and energy and the political will to over a generation or more to change things. Instead, what we have is a pressure to look good with tests. We have schools closing. We have kids being forced out of school so that the tests will go up.
That's right.
And as you were talking to me earlier, there's like hundreds of urban and rural schools are being closed. A lot of teachers are losing their jobs. I'm not sure where I'm going with that.
I just came back from Los Angeles, Mike.
That's where I was going.
In California, 25,000 teachers and school workers are losing their jobs. The stimulus, the education stimulus, is going to save a lot of those jobs, but that's just a temporary fix. And the question is, here in Chicago and in the state of Illinois, how is that money going to be used? And an example is when we supposedly had an influx of dollars from the state lottery. I don't know if you remember that, and that was supposed to go to schools, but all they did was supplant the education budget with that lottery money, so nothing basically changed. And so the question is the governor and is the state and the mayor going to simply supplant education funding with this new stimulus money and leave things basically as status quo?
A little bit back to Obama here. I remember I got to say I do. Not only we were supporters from early on. I mean, he was a guest on this show on February 7th, 2004. But we all have had a lot of hope for him, and he talks about
and still do.
We do, and he's talked about how we need to really emphasize education to stay in the leadership position in the world. He talking a good game, and we like to think that we're going to see that manifest itself in action. What do you see though as the gap, and what he needs to do, or what's your hope that he could do, given that all these other things are going on?
Well, I think they're all connected, Mike. I think you can't deal with the current crisis, the economic crisis, without dealing with schools. Schools and the economy are very much linked. But I don't think that the way to project that is the way it's being done. Schools are being seen now as a tool for U.S. corporations to compete in the global economy. And in a recent speech, Mr. Duncan gave to 400 middle school and high school kids in Denver. He told them, you're competing with kids from India and China, and that's what education is about. You've got to beat them,
yeah, it's too bad.
And it was funny because the AP Wire story that told about this said the kids just sat there with their eyes glazed over, while Duncan told them you have to go to school longer and you have to go to school all summer long, and the kids I'm sure the kids were thinking, you mean we've got to sit in these hot unair conditioned buildings in 100-degree weather, and hear the same boring crap that we get during the rest of the year. And so what I'm hoping for is that Duncan and Obama are going to do something that fundamentally changes, or at least pushes a change in the way teaching and learning take place, and not just talking about more top-down control and more, turning schools over to the city's mayors and more closing of schools. Yeah, so that's where I'm hoping things go to, and I'm optimistic in a way. I can't help but be optimistic after the last 8 years of darkness that we face under that neocon administration.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7, Loyola University's community radio station. I'm Michael James. I'm your host for this morning's edition of Live from the Heartland. I'm here with my friend and educator Mike Klonsky.